Welcome to Patchwork Quilts with Diane, and this week's video is all about the heart quilt. Very pretty little quilt, well, quite a big quilt really. It's the spring equinox today, 20th of March, but the temperature has suddenly dropped and I've gone cold, so I'm in my winter woolies and I'm all cosy in the house. So I have a nice warm drink, and if you'd like to join me, I'll tell you the story of this quilt. It's all wrapped up, ready to go. So it has a home and it'll catch first post in the morning. So let me tell you how the story of this quilt began. So if you recall, a few weeks ago, I was contacted by a customer, Lady G, who asked me to make a commission quilt for her daughter. It was the Queen of Hearts. So it was white hearts with scrappy blocks all around it and a pinwheel. She wanted it in white, pink and purple. And that one went off to her daughter. Well, she was really pleased with it, and almost immediately she asked me to make another quilt because apparently she has two daughters. And if you give something to one, then sometimes you need to provide something for another one. I have two sisters, so I remember what that was like growing up. Unless it's a special occasion for a Christmas or a birthday, then that's okay. But otherwise, gifts that sort of appear out of the ether need to be shared about. And so the young lady that requested this quilt was quite specific with her requirements. She wanted heart-shaped hearts, she wanted stripes on the heart, light pinks and dark pinks on a white background and in columns. So, okay. There's a little more to add to it than that, is there? No room for change really. That's what she wanted, so that's what I was going to provide for her. And so I'll show you how I did that. So I think we'll begin by looking at the selection of fabric, and we'll start with the background. So it was a white tone on tone. So you can see it's two-tone and there's like a sunburst. And she wanted dark pinks and light pink stripes. And so this is the pink that I've selected to go with that lovely white. And I have a range of soft pinks to go with those darker pinks. And I've bought this Summer Loft collection of Gutermann fat quarter bundles. We'll open that and have a look at that in a second. And there are some scraps left over from her sister's quilt, so I want to incorporate those. I think that'll be quite a nice touch. And I haven't mentioned it anywhere about the inclusion of those strips. It's just something I've slipped in there. There wasn't very much at all. There was only about 5 strips, but I just think it's quite nice. I did add later, when I made some extra blocks, some of that other fabric, but in the main I used the Gutermann fabric fat quarter bundle. And there are 5 pieces in this fat quarter bundle, so it's a nice selection to form the stripes. So I shall make a sample block, work out the dimensions, and then I will share that with you. And now it's time for some mathematical gobbledygook. Bear with me, it lasts for a few minutes. I've left it in, you might find it useful. Fast forward if you don't. So I want to create hearts that look like that. And so I'm thinking of using these fat quarters. So I've done a little calculation. So fat quarters are usually between 18 inches and 22 inches. Sometimes they're a little bit skinny on the cut and they're 21 inches. So from the 18-inch length, if I had 2-inch strips, I'd be able to get 9 sets from those. And they would be the length of the fat quarter, which we'll say is the smallest amount, 21 inches. And I'd be able to subcut that into 2 so I would have lengths of 10 inches. So from the fat quarter bundles I'd be able to get those sizes, and I think that would be a nice size to work with. So my intention is to join 3 of the 2-inch wide by 10-inch lengths together, and then I will snowball the corners off the one length, so 2 inches off each of these corners there, and I'll repeat that. So I'll do that on both of the sides, and then I will join those down the middle, so these will still be the 10-inch, and then I will snowball a 5-inch square off each corner. So I should have enough of a 1/4 of an inch seam there to protect that point, and I'll do double seam on those 5-inch squares so that I'll have a half square triangle left over. And so for each fat quarter I should get 18 lengths that measure 2 inches by 10 inches. And so I need 6 lengths for each heart in the various pinks. 1 fat quarter will give me 3 hearts. And so when I say that 1 fat quarter will be enough strips to make 3 hearts, that's without the background fabric. You need that as well. So if you're using fat quarter bundles, bear that in mind. So I just need to determine the size of this finished block, and then I'll need to work out how many hearts I'll need for this quilt. Okay, let's try that out. And I've sewn those strips together, and I've pressed the seams going towards the middle, and I've got these 2-inch squares. I have put a faint pencil line that I'm going to sew on. Okay, so now I'm going to press those, snip the corners off and join those blocks. So at the moment they are 10 inches in length. Well, so far so good, that's looking nice. What I did on this side was I pressed the seam towards the white, and on this side I pressed the seam towards the pink, so they've nested nicely there. And so now I'm just going to sew this side of the line on this 5-inch square, and then I'm also going to sew on the line of this one here, so I should have a nice half square triangle. So I've sewn on those lines and I've pressed, so now I'm going to cut in between the lines, and that heart looks like that, and I have trimmed that to a 4-inch half square triangle, so that might be quite an interesting block. So once I pressed open the bottom of the heart, I repeated the same process with the other side to give me the full heart shape. And I think that makes quite a nice block. It is 9.5 inches wide by 10 inches long, and I think I'm going to make a 5 by 5 quilt. Okay, let's make some blocks. And just to speed up the process a little bit, I've cut the fat quarters in 4 inches by the length of the fat quarter and sewn those together. So there's a seam on each side. I've pressed those, and now I'm going to cut them into 10-inch lengths and then in 2-inch wide. Well, there you can see 2 piles of the heart blocks. I've trimmed them all. They are 9.5 inches wide by 9 3/4 inches long. It's an odd shape, I know, but that's what they trimmed down to. So they're looking very pretty. And just to mix the design up slightly, you can see I've created 2 blocks, 12 block A's and 13 block B's. And the difference, if you look closely, you can see on the left of block A, there are 2 pale pink on the left hand side of the heart and 1 pale pink on the right. And then in B, it's the other way round. And so because these hearts are going to be going down in lines, I didn't want all of the dark and the light lines to be underneath each other exactly. And so moving them around like that will create just a little bit of interest, I think, with the design. So that was my plan initially, just to avoid straight lines going down from heart to heart. However, when I put them together, I did move some around because of the way that the fabrics worked together. So there are some instances where you know, a dark might be underneath a dark, but not too many, and I think it worked out okay. And I've decided that I'm putting the white sashing between the hearts, and I'm going to make that sashing 2 inches wide, the same as the stripes in the heart, and I think that will create an overall balance. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. But if you wanted a larger quilt, if you wanted it wider or if you wanted it longer, that would be a great opportunity to add wider sashing in between. So mine is 2 inches on the side and then on the top and the bottom. But like I say, if you made that 3 inches or even 3.5 inches, it would still work. You'll have more space between the hearts, but the quilt will grow a lot quicker. Well, that's the 5th column joined together, and that measures just over 53 inches, and I'm thinking I might quite like to extend it. So if I can get another 11 hearts from the fabric that's left over, I might extend the width and the length by 1 heart. I'll have to do some calculations and have a look at that. And so to give me the 11 hearts, I'm going to need 33 10-inch lengths, 10 inch by 2 inch in the light pink and the dark pinks. I've got plenty of the dark pinks. I'm just going to have a look at the lighter pinks. So as you can see, I did manage to make another 11 hearts. So it's now 6 by 6, 36 hearts in all. And so I've sewn them into columns, and there's an edging on the right hand side of each column, except for the far right one, because that will be the border of the finished quilt. And I'm just playing around at the moment with distribution of colours, and once I've organised that, I shall sew it together. And so how I decided to add the sashing was by putting sashing on the bottom of 3 hearts, and then I would join those together, and then I would put a long piece of sashing from the top of the first heart down to the bottom of the sashing of the 3rd heart, and that made sure that everything was kept nice and square, so that when I join these together, the columns with the sashing on, and then I could join them to the column next to it, there was no sort of hearts leaning over or dropping down. It kept everything nice and square. And so the way I've decided I'm going to quilt this is to just quilt the presser foot width away from that seam on the right hand side all the way to the edge. So I'm starting from the middle of the quilt and I'm doing all of the seams right hand side till I get to the edge, and then I'll flip it over and I will do the same on the other side, and then I'll flip it back again and I will do on the left hand side. So in the end there'll be 2 rows of straight seams, and I think that will look nice and modern and be nice and strong. And then there's quite a large gap between the end of the heart and the start of the next one, and so I've just used the ruler as a guide and just made a thumbnail crease into the fabric, and I will go on the right hand side of that. And my customer, Lady G, wanted this quilt to be as large as I could possibly make it, and I did explain that I just work on a small domestic sewing machine. In the end it turned out to be 65 inches wide by 67 inches long, and she was happy with that. It was quite heavy, and so I took my time and just fed it through. I let the quilt and the sewing machine do the work, and I just sort of balanced it through. And I still have the robins nesting in the garden, so I can't hang this quilt outside yet to show you. So I've taken a shot on the floor, and then I've taken a couple of shots in the bedroom on the bed, so you'll get a good idea of what it looks like. And it hangs nicely over the bed. That's white with dark pink and light pink hearts in rows. And there's a close-up of the straight line quilting. And the back is this really pretty two-tone wide back. And so that's it for this week. That is the story of the Stripy Heart Quilt, and I would like to thank you for your company if you are still with me, and I will see you next week. So take really good care of yourself. Thanks for watching. Bye.